Hope everyone is doing well. It is feeling and looking a lot like fall here in the foothills in Northern California. We've had some 30-degree overnight weather, so it's nice and chilly. And so I don't know where you are, but hopefully it's all good where you are. And looking forward to kind of a busy time of year. I want to ask again, and if you have any thoughts or ideas, good morning, Lynn, about this. Always looking for ideas and to keep you excited about the show and the things that we're doing and the possibilities of what you may or may not learn. And so if you have any ideas of a quilt, a block, a technique, a sampler, whatever, if you don't mind, pop it into the chat box or send it to us on email. My email address is there on the left side, or send it to the forum and give us some ideas so that we, as we're looking for the next project or the next things that I'm going to do, that we cover some of the things that you're looking for and hopefully wanting to get some help with. So thank you for that. I would appreciate if you could do that. Laverne, Kyla, Mary, good morning. Welcome. Always love it when you say hello and ask your questions and put your comments in the box. So please do that. Today's lesson is on the applique sunflower block. It's the last block in the quilt, which is kind of exciting. It went by really fast, or at least it feels like that to me. So today we're going to talk about putting that together, and we're also going to talk about finishing the top of the quilt, the assembly of it, so that all of that is completed, and then next week we finish with this particular quilt. I want to talk about putting on borders, and there is a stripe. There is a little bit of a stripe in here, but this is going to be a little bit unique because the stripe is not actually correct on there. It's got some waves in it, so it doesn't completely match up anywhere on the stripe with the zip or the zipper fabric, and it's not really the zipper. I think we've got snaps or something with that, but some of the lines are not completely straight, so that'll be interesting to work with, and that will be finishing up and talking about binding and a little bit of the quilt ideas. So let's pop in and get started on that. So here are the directions, and again, it's really, most of this is, well, not even most of it, all of it is really applique. And as you know, I have chosen to do the starch turn method of applique, and I followed through on that here. But I do want to also talk about the applique raw edge that you can do and put some possibilities with that. So this is all here, and then it goes in to tell you how to place those on here. But I want to draw your attention for placement on your background rectangle. It gives you dimensions for, the top of your sunflower, how far in and how far down to come, and approximately, the length that it would take to put that first sunflower on your quilt. And then it also does it for the second one and the space between these two. And so each one has how far do you come down, and that's keeping it so that you have room for your seam allowance when you put the quilt top together. So just pay attention to those lines right there so that you have enough room for your seam allowance. All right? And so I'm going to put that one aside for just a moment and take a look at a couple of different things. With the, so I have done my, turned applique and put it onto my background. And where it needed to lap over, and you can tell from the pictures where that is, I cut that straight with the bottom of the piece so that when I sew it together, that comes. With the raw edge applique, you're going to be, and I don't know if I can help you see the shiny side or not with the lights and the camera here, but a two-sided fusible. And you can see through this really well. This is the Quilter Select applique. And so this is the shiny side, and this is the side that you would copy this on. And for me, I have an HP printer, and it goes through just fine with that. So I could lay the sheet there and run it through, except I don't want to do that completely because they put it on the page and overlapped it, so I drew it on. And just to give you an idea of what we're doing, I drew the leaf, and I should have done that a little bit darker so you could see a little bit better, but I drew a leaf on the paper side of it, and then I ironed it to a piece of fabric. And because there's these side pieces, and you're giving yourself room as you sew it onto a piece of fabric onto the back side, all right, you need to use an applique pressing sheet, and so that it doesn't ruin your iron or ruin the mat or your ironing board cover or that. So make sure you do that. So now what has to happen is that you would trim this and cut it directly on that line that you drew. And again, I did talk about this when we were cutting earlier, that you really want to keep your scissors in its sweet spot and turn the paper, not the scissors, so that you don't get those little, divot marks or those little pointy things. And, it comes out very, very smooth this way. All right. And again, that sweet spot is like right in here on a scissors. Okay. You never want to go up to the edge unless you're snipping into to that and into a valley so that you can turn it. So this is a very smooth cut all the way along. Then you would remove your paper, and now you have a sticky side. And what's really nice about the applique is that it's movable. You can put it down on your cloth, and then if it's not quite right, it moves, it comes up very easily, and you can lay it down again until you put the iron to it. It pretty much can go wherever you want it to go. Over and over again, multiple times, you can put it down on your fabric and lift it up until you get everything straight and where it's supposed to be. Now, with the raw edge, you would need to put something around the sides of it. For example, the blanket stitch, another stitch that you enjoy on your machine. I was looking at my machine for fall or autumn or Halloween things, and there's a couple of stitches that would certainly work there, or a satin stitch, something around the edge of that, or you could do it certainly by hand. So if you are doing the raw edge, keeping those, those things in mind. Now, once that you have, if you're doing raw edge, you turned it, you're doing something else, you're going to have put all of this completed onto your piece. Then I want to go to the quilt assembly, the quilt top assembly. And it takes you through each section on here to do what you're exactly going to do, even down to the tree applique instructions. And once we get there, I'm going to share with you a couple of thoughts that are running through my head on that tree, because I did cut. I put it on a 10-inch square, as it says right here in the instructions, and I cut it 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch wide, those strips, so that I could create that tree. But I also have had another thought since that time. So on this page is the layout, and as you can see, they are listing the sashing strips. So you would go back to the white fabric and those strips that you cut at the very beginning, and this one is, I think it's 1.5 by 29.5. So you would sew the AKs to these blocks, and once you have that at 29.5, you're going to sew these two together with that AM piece. All right, then you're going to add an AN piece to the side of that, and then sew that large block there. And then that part of your quilt is completed. That's section 1. You then have a horizontal sashing in here, and I want to talk a little bit about that horizontal sashing. And again, we did the leaves, and here you have you will construct an AP, AO, and an AP block with that stripe with a snap fabric in between, and it's going to need to line up with the chimney on the house. But this piece, before you put the moon and you put the tree in, will need to have this piece put in that matches up with the roof. You're gonna put the sashing in between. Then comes the moon. Then comes sewing these two sections together. Once section 2 is sewn to section 3, then you can work on the tree part of it and put that in. And as you can see below the block 1 and block 2, you have another sashing piece. That would complete section 2 with that. Then you have to obviously do section 3 with AN here, your sashing pieces between your houses, this sashing piece up here, and now these will be even, and you'll sew this to section 2, and the very last thing is the moon and the tree. All right, I'm going to check questions and thoughts up here. All right, I think most of it is good morning, which is wonderful. Thank you all for popping in and being with us today. So if there's any questions on this, it's pretty straightforward overall. But, and each of the sections really does lay it out for you pretty well. I saw, no questions, hopefully, but if you have them, please ask and let us know. As I was finishing up on my blocks, I was, they look just fine the way they are with the fabrics that we have. But a thought occurred to me is, could I, in our family we call it shushing it up, and, adding something to it that might get exciting. And I was looking yesterday at eyelash yarn, and I'm thinking, before I sew anything down, these are sunflowers. What if I put some eyelash, around that sunflower, and just, because the center of a sunflower, or I might, even want to throw a few beads in on one side or something like that, just to give it a little texture, a little dimension to it, so I could put them that way. I could have the eyelashes going into the center, and so that would add something to to that center with a few beads or something. So that was a thought. while I was trying to find my eyelash yarn, I also ran across this little guy. And, this is a little bit more subtle, but it could work under there, and I would just put this, it's kind of like the eyelash. It's got little fuzzies coming off of it at, different intervals across there. And a button in the center would also add some dimension. And I've got some really large white buttons, and I've got a couple of orange ones too that would be kind of fun in there. So this is the piece that it is. And so, if you wanted to do something like that. Then also with my tree, I have some brown variegated yarn that I picked up along the way. And my thought was I could put the black fabric on the back side of that, but then I could add that yarn over it and give that tree and sew it down, much like you would thread paint onto a pattern. And that occurred to me that would be a lot of fun to do as well with the tree, and put that yarn over the top with the black fabric underneath. So there's just some thoughts to adding, a little bit of texture, a little bit of something else, or just leave it as it is because it's quite pretty. And I'm really liking this quilt as it's coming together. But now I want to talk about putting on sashing, and we're going to talk again about this next week. I put a friction mark just so you can see where the center of this is. I know that from teaching classes and stuff, there are still those who take a strip. You would cut 1.5 inches, and you may not cut it down to the 29.5 inches that it needs to be to fit. And for me, I say that this is all part of the squaring up process. Others would probably not use that phraseology, but I do. And so when you are cutting the pieces, you need to measure it and cut it what it needs to be, because that's what you did with the background. And so I'm also going to find my center on my 29.5 inches, and that would be right there. And so I want to pin that center first. And then instead of just taking this and start moving along this, the side of it, I want to go to the corner because I want my corners to match. And this is especially true when you're putting it between blocks that you have pieced or sewn together. Because, maybe you didn't quite get that 1/4 inch, or you got a little less, or whatever. And so I'm going to pin my edges on here. And this goes for anything. And again, when I put my pins in, I don't slide them like this because that can oftentimes push the top and they don't stay together. So put your pins straight down, then turn and pin it on. So now if I want to put other pins in, I will, make sure that that's laying flat. Go to the center point in between those pins and drop another pin in and sew it. And if there's any easing that needs to be done, it would be done at that point of time. And so with all of the sashing that you put into your quilt, you will need to do it the same way. And that brings it into being square. If you are working from that perspective. So even the small ones, if we were, putting sashing along here, I would still do the same thing. I would find my center. I'd pin the center first, and then my outside edges so that my corners fit in, and then I would, as I'm sewing, gently ease whatever I needed to ease in if I needed to do that. So go ahead and create. Let me get that picture again. You're going to go ahead and create the entire top of the center of your quilt, putting in all of the sashings wherever they might be, and that sashing shouldn't go on the top of that. It's actually for the bottom, and I apologize for that. But please note that sashing is on the bottom of the sunflowers, not on the top where I put it. Basically, I was trying to explain how I put sashing on, no matter where it is on here. And when you get to this point right here, and you are putting section 2 and section 3 together, I would like you to pay very close attention, and this is going to take the place of your center, if you will, and you're going to match up those seam lines on both sides. And there may or may not be a little bit of easing that has to go in one place or the other. If, again, as I said, your 1/4 inch may have, not been quite the 1/4 inch, or a little too much, or whatever the differences between those. But you do want to match up those spots right here, because I will tell you that they are going to be very visible if those do not match well. And then you would take, once those are pinned and ready for sewing, then you would pin on your outside edges, and again, pin as often as you feel you need to in between those as you ease that in. So, are there any questions? Let me jump up here. Oh, Marie, I'm so glad it popped up for you. All right. Jerry has a good suggestion to use some texture magic for the sunflower centers before you cut it and applique it. That would make it very, very stiff in that center, and it would lay very flat for that for sure. Oh, Terry, thank you. I like to personalize so that, quilts are a little bit more me. All right. I am not seeing other questions or comments at this point. It's always exciting to get to this point in a quilt, because we're finishing up and we're getting ready to move on to something else. So I'm going to be playing this week. I'm going to sew everything together. I've started doing that a little bit, and get my top completed, and then I'm going to play, as I said, with the tree, and possibly add some of that variegated brown and black yarn that I have a little bit of, and work a little bit on that. And also possibly with the the sunflowers, some of the eyelash or that other, and who knows, I may go looking and see what other scraps of yarn I have. My knitting friends have always given me little scraps and bits and pieces from fun yarns that they've used in their work, because I don't knit. I used to crochet, but not anymore. And they so I have these little bits and pieces that I throw in all over the place in my work, and especially when I do my art quilts. And so I appreciate that. But also at shows, and I'm jealous of Kristen today, because she's at market and getting to see a lot of what's happening new, what's coming out, and all of that. So hopefully she's got some great ideas when she comes back that we'll be doing. And Terry, I really appreciate what quilts are on your bucket list to make. I have a few, and I'm hoping that somewhere along the line I get to at least make another one of my bucket list quilts, along with some of you as well. So thank you for asking that question. I appreciate. And do I have an idea for the next project? Yes, I do. Kristen and I have talked about it. And, Christmas is coming, and there's only, a few dates in between here and there. And I'm going to do some of the blocks that I have found for Christmas quilts. And to be honest with you, I only have one Christmas quilt, which is kind of surprising. But I am thinking of, doing blocks or projects that you could create from those blocks for, the holidays. And actually, they could be really for any holiday, but we're going to focus Christmas-wise. And that's what we were thinking. But also, we want to hear from all of you, and to just see, what it is that you want to learn, or if there is a Christmas quilt or a holiday quilt, or any quilt at all, or a technique that you would like to learn. I would so appreciate, because after a while it gets hard to think about what can I do next. And I know that I've been doing this for a little while, and I could probably go back and repeat some of the techniques, because one of the things that I know about me is I learn something new all the time, and the next time I would want to change it up. So I think it could be just as good that way too. And I know Kristen is on helping me this morning, and she's probably listening. And so as she's walking around Market, she sent me some pictures of some sampler quilts and things this morning, and there's some pretty fun ones that she shared with me already. So I look forward to that. Please let me know, and have fun putting that top together. It's a lot of work. It takes a little bit of time. It's not hard. It's just a little bit time consuming. So you have a lot to do for this week, and then the borders next week, and talk a little bit about putting it together. Again, a few apologies for not having it done prior to Halloween, since it's a little bit of a Halloween fall quilt, a little bit. But the fabrics just didn't come in time for us to get started on it and get the kits done. So you'll have it for next year, and it's going to be fun. And just a thought, it's kind of personal, but I am totally excited. There's a wedding coming up in my family. My daughter's getting married, and it's coming quick. She got engaged not too long ago, and the wedding is in January. So that's filling, my thinking and time. So I'm thinking about a wedding quilt, and how fast could I get it done? So you guys have a wonderful week. I will see you next week. And blessings to all of you.